Cool. Our live stream's live on YouTube, so we can kick it off whenever.
Excellent. We'll wait 2 minutes. How's that sound? We're a little bit early at the moment.
All right, let's crack on, eh?
Cool, let's do it. All right. Welcome, everyone. Who's kicking this off? You and me?
It was meant to be me. All right, hey, welcome everybody. This is the rule of 55 targets, KPIs, and setting them and setting realistic targets for our people. So yeah, if you're here for that, you're in the right place. So a lot of the content we'll be covering today will be some foundational knowledge around these topics, presented by Will. And that'll be available. That'll be relevant to everybody, regardless of what practice management system you might be using. And then toward the end, we'll look at some more zero-specific solutions there. So that's the general agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So we're going to start off with some really basic stuff. So the first couple of minutes, we're covering some very foundational things. So it does get more complex as we move through. Right. So our agenda today is we're talking about the common myths around productivity and how it's measured. We're going to look at utilization versus productivity and how one of them can lie to you, but why both are important. What is the rule of 55? We all want to know, and how can it be applied to a firm? How other firms improve productivity and how this impacts revenue, setting and monitoring KPIs for your team. And finally, we'll look at very briefly the productivity and its relationship with WIP, recoverability, and workflow and capacity. So we're looking at tying some concepts together here. Cool. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. Reubs will be on the chat in the background. Yeah, awesome. Let's get into it. Cool. So productivity is the ratio of billable time to total time worked. All right. So another way to think about it is work that is productive is assigned a billable rate. Cool. Now, so productivity also has a formula that we can use. So in common language, people talk about being productive being being focused. But in a business context, and particularly in the context of an accounting firm, productivity is something we can measure with a formula, and it's your billable time divided by your total time. That's productivity. All right. So what we're going to do is look at some weekly timesheet calculations here, and I want to do this to highlight a point. That point is about leave, and you'll see this in a moment. So to calculate our productivity, we're going to have our billable hours, our non-billable hours, which is our internal or our non-client hours. Then we have our total hours, which are these two added together. Then we have leave, all hours, and productivity. Cool. So let's start Monday. We have 6 billable hours. 2 non-billable hours. So obviously 8 is our total hours. So all hours is 8, and our productivity is 75%. Real basic, right? Cool. Now on Tuesday, let's say we do 4 hours of billable work. We do 4 hours of non-billable work. That's 8 hours. So down the bottom here, you can see my total. So we've got 16 hours total of work this week. No leave. All hours is 16 as well. So our productivity today is 50%, but now at a week level, we're at 62.5%. Cool. Now, Wednesday, we take the day off and we log 8 hours of leave. The reason I want to show this is show you the first point I want to make is that leave does not impact productivity. So leave is excluded from that productivity calculation. Great. Now, some common myths around productivity. So that's a typo there. Being more focused does not mean you are more productive. So as I mentioned earlier, in common language, people talk about like being like, there's all these productivity hacks out there, and to be more productive, and you've got to block out distractions. And that in a business context, it's purely just how many times am I spending on client work versus non-client work. That's productivity. So I wanted to dispel that first myth. Now, another common myth is rework. So rework actually is productive work. It's billable work. Now, you might write that time off. That is a write-off. So write-off is different conversation than productivity. So rework is productive work. So all client work is productive work. So if you're working for a client, it's productive work. If you're not working for a client, it's not productive work. And if we remember that quote we looked at before, where productive work has a billable rate. So if we can assign a billable rate to it, it's productive. Working longer does not make you more productive. So this is, again, we're going into utilization versus productivity shortly. Now, people think that if I just work more hours, my productivity will increase. Well, it will slightly if you're just doing billable work in those extra hours, but just working longer will not make your productivity go to 100 or over 100%. Taking leave does not reduce your productivity. So sometimes there's a fear that productivity will drop if you go on leave. That's not the case. It's excluded from the productivity calculation. And finally, utilization is different than productivity. So there's a few myths out there. Now, utilization. We don't talk about this too much, but we thought on the topic of productivity, it'd be worth getting into a bit of detail around it. And what does that formula look like? So for utilization, we take actual billable time. So it's similar to productivity. So the top of our equation is billable time divided by, we have, again, a typo here, there should be contracted time minus leave multiplied by expected productivity. So with utilization, we have assumptions baked into it, where productivity is purely just the numbers, where how much time did I do that was billable and how much time did I do overall? That's productivity. Where utilization has an assumption baked into it, which is how many hours do I work and how many of those hours am I expected to be billable? So it's very, very different. So utilization can be over 100%, but productivity can never be over 100% because you can't do more billable hours than your total hours, right? So that's a very common mistake that people make when calculating productivity. It reminds me of a benchmark report that Ruben and I looked at a few years ago that wasn't put together by us. It was done through a survey. And the top result was 117% productivity. And then that's where we sort of looked at and go, well, they've obviously got utilization and productivity confused, which is why we wanted to address that here. Cool. All right. So we'll look at an example here. So Jenny Jameson, we have expected productivity, total expected hours, expected customer hours, and then actual customer hours, actual internal, actual leave, total hours, and all hours, right? So let's put some numbers in here. So 75% is our expected productivity. 40 hours is expected hours. So we're expecting 30 of those 40 hours to be on customer work. Cool. Now we'll look at some actuals here. And sorry, I didn't explain. The reason we're doing this, we're going to look at the difference between productivity and utilization here. So same numbers, we'll look at how it impacts the two different formulas. So let's say we did 32 actual hours, 10 internal hours. We took 8 hours leave. So there's 42 hours of work done, but 50 hours in total. So it looks like Jenny's gone and worked way over her contracted hours here, right? Now, from a productivity perspective, we take the actual billable time divided by total hours. And from a utilization perspective, we're going to take again, I've got my typo there, contracted time minus leave, expected productivity. So we have 32 billable hours divided by our total hours being 42. That's productivity. Utilization, we've got 32. And our contracted hours is 40 minus 8 multiplied by our expected productivity being 75%, which is 24. Cool. So our productivity is 76% and our utilization is 101%. Cool. Just wanted to highlight the two different, so the same example with the two different formulas there, so we can see them side by side. Now, utilization can lie to you, and this comes back to the idea that you have assumptions baked into your utilization calculation. Because what's beautiful about productivity is it's just looking at the raw numbers. It looks at our input versus our output. We looked at how many billable hours we've done divided by the total hours we've done. With utilization, we're setting our expectations at a team member level in terms of their productivity. And what we can do is we can end up having a firm structure where we've got a lot of administrators, and we also don't have high productivity targets for our team members. So our target productivity could be super low. So we're actually setting ourselves up to failure. Now, with utilization, because those assumptions are built into the formula, we could see our utilization at 100% or even 120% utilization. So we can go, wow, our firm's doing fantastic. We're at 110% utilization. But in reality, you're actually not doing so well because those low targets are actually baked into the calculation here. So that's why we like to say utilization can lie to you, thinking you're doing better than you actually are. Right, so productivity can be measured at an individual, a team, and a firm level. So, and you want to be measuring each of these on a regular basis. Now, here's the rule of 55. You should aim for 55% productivity at a firm level. That's the number you want to be aiming for. And how we arrived at this value is we've benchmarked, and I'm sure most of you on this call right now would have seen the benchmark reports we do. So we've benchmarked for 5 years in a row. We've done both Australia and New Zealand benchmark reports. And in all of those reports, let's say there's 10 reports, the swings we've seen in productivity on average have been between 54 and 56%. So with that, we're pretty confident saying that the average firm operates at 55% productivity. Now, we've run some modeling on this, looking at some different scenarios, and you really want to be aiming at 55% productivity. But if you get below 50% productivity, it becomes really dangerous to hire administrators because you end up in a death spiral. I'm going to look at some numbers on that shortly. But we just wanted to really point out that 55% productivity is where you should be aiming as a firm level. And if you do hire an administrator, you're going to dip back down and you want to try to bring that up again. So it's this game of trying to build your firm by hiring to create capacity. And then you fill that capacity. But as you go and fill that capacity, there is obviously more administrative burden on the firm. Therefore, you do need to hire these administrators. But at all times, be aware of your productivity, really trying to aim at 55% and above. Right, this is a really important quote, this one. If we get our ratio of administrators to billable people wrong, we will find ourselves in a situation where we don't have enough cash to create more capacity, to bring on new clients, and we find ourselves stuck. And we're going to look at an example of this. All right, so we've got our billable hours, internal hours, total hours, productivity, the rate, the revenue, cost, gross profit, this overheads, net profit. So a bit going on there. But hopefully we're all accountants here. We can follow these things. All right. So then we've got our team members. We've got David, who's going to be our partner in this situation. Jane, Henry, and Tim are accountants, and Kate is our administrator. Good little firm here, as we're about to see. So these are just, this is a sort of a back of a napkin type plan around your capacity and what profit you could expect the firm to have. So you can all do this based on your team members you have. So what we're doing is we're expecting David to work full-time, 1,600 hours, with a 50% productivity, which means his time is going to be split 50% internal, 800 hours, and 50% of his time will be billable on client work. Now, his rate I've put in here at $250 an hour. So the revenue we'd expect him to generate would be $200,000. His cost here is $120,000, giving us a GP of $80,000 on David. Then we're going to put our overheads and net profit in at the end, okay? Now, we've got Jane. So Jane has an 81% target productivity, a rate of 150 an hour. So revenue is 195, very close to David, but higher productivity. As we see, productivity is a great way to increase revenue. Lower cost, so we got a $95,000 GP. Henry's got the same numbers, and Tim, a little bit lower productivity, but for the most part, pretty similar numbers. Here we go. And then we bring through Kate. Now, Kate is our administrator. So we've got negative $80,000 on Kate, right? Now, at a firm level, we've done 4,600 billable hours. We've done 3,400 non-billable, total hours 8,000, 58%. So we're over that 55% threshold. So this is a firm, a good-looking firm. So our revenue 770, our cost, bring through our GP, less our overheads, net profit, we're looking at 140,000. Obviously, I'm just grabbing these numbers. These are just numbers that I'm making up. But I'm just going to really highlight the point that I'm trying to make here as we start bringing some more people into this firm. Let's see, we'll hire James. Things are going well. We hire James, another billable team member, looking really good. And now we have 60% productivity, high-performing firm right here. With our overheads would increase slightly with more licensing, but $200,000 profit. So this firm is running really well. But Kate not doing so well. She's got a lot of work, and she's really trying to struggle keeping up with everything. So let's say she contacts you in tears one day, really struggling with the amount of work she's got on. She goes, I need some help. I need someone to take over the finance and the reconciliations for me. I need someone to take over all this marketing work that you've given me. So what do? We go out and we hire Mike and we hire Sue, all non-billable. So what we get in effect is our 45% is our new productivity, right? So when we start adding these costs in, and our overheads will increase through the new seats, and now net profit, this is assuming we're at max capacity here. This is assuming every team member is completely booked up at their target capacity. We're now in a situation where our firm's stuck. We don't have the cash flow to hire a new team member to increase capacity to bring on more clients. And this is where the firm will find itself stuck. So this is where it's really important when you're hiring, look at your productivity. Like, what's your capacity? What's your available capacity at a firm level? And then what is your actual productivity at a firm level? And if your firm level productivity is under 50%, really you need to look at other ways to reduce the administration in your firm rather than just hiring more administrators. Because once we arrive in the situation, it can be very hard to climb out. Now, just one thing I want to highlight here is utilization. Assuming that our plan here ends up being our actuals, everyone here will be 100% utilized. So we could look at this and go, great, 100% utilization, firm's looking awesome, we're happy. In reality, however, 45% is the max productivity we could ever expect this firm. And that's assuming everyone hits their targets every month. So yeah, just a pretty, this is a bit of a death spiral you can get into, where the only way to get out of that is to wait for an administrator to resign, or you need to do a restructure, which is obviously a really painful process. Cool, so productivity and its impact on revenue. So recoverability is the percentage of work performed that converts into revenue after adjusting for write-ons and write-offs. So put more simply, it measures how effectively a firm turns its effort into invoices. All right, so we have the WIP equation. Now, most of you, I believe, are familiar with the WIP equation. So work in progress is work done, not yet invoiced. Now, we can look at it as just a value. That's an asset that for us. So if I've done $500 of work, that's an asset of mine that I can exchange for an invoice with you, which will eventually become cash in the bank. But we can also look at work in progress over a period, right? So that's where we have opening work in progress in a period and closing work in progress in a period. And to look at these next concepts, we need to have an understanding of the WIP equation. So I'm just going to do a brief example here. So let's say our opening WIP 0. Time added is 3,400. We invoiced $3,000. And the reason that invoices are negative is because work in progress, being work done, not yet invoiced, is an asset that's positive. And when we invoice it, it reduces it. So what we've done is we've added $3,400 of time, and then we've reduced it by $3,000 by doing the invoice. Then we have $300 of write-offs, giving us a closing WIP of 0. So this would be the life of a job here, right? So that's poor recoverability on this job. Let's look at another job. In this situation, we have a write-up. So we ideally want write-ups on our jobs and not write-offs. So the reason that we have net write-ups, we call them write-ups in our reports, is because we want to represent a negative as a bad thing, being a write-off. Cool. So that's the WIP equation. Now we can also look at WIP. We can look at WIP from a whole different perspectives. We can look at it from the perspective of a job. We can look at it from the perspective of a client, a firm level. We can also look at WIP at a team member level, but that does have its challenges in here, which we're going to have a look at now. So let's say Kate has done in a month. Kate's done $27,500 a time across all of her jobs, and she's invoiced $30,500. So we got net write-ups of $3,000. So we could look at this and say, Kate had a great month. She billed out more than the work that she did. We look at Ted. Now, Ted at $26,300, invoiced less, so he had a $2,900 write-off. Now, at a really basic level, you could look at this and say, Kate's had a good month, Ted, not such a good month. Now, what we believe is you shouldn't just look at that surface level data. You need to drill into the data to really understand what's going on. So if we were to look at the jobs that Kate worked on, we'll see here that some jobs were write-ups and some jobs are write-offs. So for job 4, I'd want to know what happened to that job. Why do we have a $2,000 write-off? So we can ask some questions there. And for job 5, I'm really interested in, like, how do we get such a big write-up? What went so well on that job? So under that $3,000 value, there's so much information here that we can still explore. And then for Ted's jobs, so he actually got write-ups on all of his jobs except one, job 5. So we look at that 2,900 and we think, not so bad, not too worried about that. But when we look at it a little bit deeper, he's actually doing really well on all his jobs, except this one job for job 5. And you could ask the questions like, was the budget not communicated with Ted? Does our workflow system not represent the actual amount of time he had allocated? Or has he just been stacking time to this job while he's actually been doing other things? So there's so many things that be going on behind the scenes here. Now, recovered rates allow us to cut through all the noise. And with recovered rates, what we're doing is we're taking that the WIP data there, being those write-ons and write-offs, and we're starting to bring in productivity information, starting to bring in that time information. We can start calculating recovered rates. So a recovered rate is our revenue divided by our billable time. So we've got some new concepts coming out here now. Now, revenue is billable time plus our net write-ups. Cool. So our formula calculate our recovered rates on our people and on our jobs and on our clients and on our firm. We want revenue divided by the billable time that went into it. And then you might ask the question, why do we use revenue to calculate recovered rates? Why can't we just use the invoice value? Because the invoice value is in our WIP equation, right? Why can't we just go, that what was invoiced, and let's divide that by our time? And I'll show you why that's not possible. All right. Now, that's not possible because of WIP movements, right? We don't open and close every job within the same period. So let's say that we have a job here, and in April 2026, we open the job. We had $600 of time to the job. We invoice $10,000. So it gives us closing WIP of negative $9,400. Now, I'd ask you in this month, if we were going to recognize our recovered rate off that invoiced value, we're going to take $10,000. And how are we going to recognize a rate on that? Who's going to get that $10,000 of revenue? It's very, very difficult, right? Once you start having misalignment of the invoices and the time in terms of the periods that it's occurring. So what we want to do is we want to look at this and go, well, in this month here, our revenue is actually $600. We've created $600 of value. Now, then we get into May. So we're going to open our period up with our closing WIP from April, 9,400 negative. We had $11,000 of time, which gives us $1,600 of closing WIP. But we want to write that off, right? So let's put a $1,600 write-off through, arriving at 0 WIP. So that's going to be the life of the job now. So it ran for 2 months. Now, in terms of our revenue we could recognize, we could look at this first month and go, right, well, we did $600 of time, and it took us 3 hours. Our recovered rate was $200. Now, on this next one, we'd say that our time added was $11,000, less the net write-ups being $1,600, brings us to $9,400 in terms of our revenue for that period. And we can divide that by the hours that went into that time there. So that's why we can't just use invoice to calculate our billable rates. We need to look at revenue, and revenue being billable time adjusted by the net write-ups in that period. Otherwise, we're forever going to be having huge invoice values and then periods with no invoice values. So that's why we need to use revenue. So I hope that all makes sense. Very important. Now, so if revenue is billable time plus net write-ups, and our recovered rate is revenue divided by billable time, we then have our average hourly rate, which is revenue divided by total time, right? So we've got a new rate here. We've got a new concept. So recovered rates look at revenue over billable time, where average hourly rates look at revenue divided by total time. The reason they're different is because recovered rates are great for clients, jobs, and services. Clients, jobs, and services don't have productivity. all the time we put to our clients' jobs and services as billable time, right? So there's going to be no non-billable element of that. Right, average hourly rates is great for individuals, teams, and at a firm level. And that's because all of these do have both billable and non-billable time in it. Therefore, we can take the total time. So we take the revenue divided by the total time. So our average hourly rates are therefore lower than our recovered rates because it's able to look at that non-productive time as well. So something we often say is that you can't escape the average hourly rate. So no matter what you do, your average hourly rate will not lie to you. And that's because if you go and focus on it being super, super productive, so you go and put all your time to billable, you're super productive, you end up writing that time off, which means that your write-offs are going to pull that average hourly rate down. On the other side of the coin, if you say, right, we're just going to look at write-offs, we don't care about productivity, well, then naturally you're going to have people just put the correct amount of time to their jobs, and then the extra time they're going to put to non-billable. Productivity doesn't look great, but your recoverability is great, but then that all comes out in the wash in your average hourly rate. So with average hourly rates, you can't escape the rate. Right, so the last thing I want to show you here is how TED's billable rate at $200 per hour. Sorry, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at expanding this. So we've looked at this from his recovered rate. We want to bring in how we get to an average hourly rate now. So let's take all of this and we'll just look at these totals here. And this is TED's monthly performance. As we're starting to bring everything together now, productivity and revenue and recoverability all into the same report. So billable time, that was TED's billable time for the month. That's the amount of, this is the value of work that he's done. Got our net write-ups, which we recognize from our previous page. The revenue, which is our time added less than net write-ups. So recovered rate is 177.95. So that is the rate that TED recovered for the month. So now I'm going to bring some new values in. So we've got internal time, 28 hours, took 8 hours of leave. So total time was 160, giving us 82% productivity. So TED's productivity was awesome. That's really good. And his write-offs actually not too bad. So we can bring in our cost. So this is our base rate or our cost rate for TED's time. So once we've got our revenue and our cost, we can then calculate our profit. And again, you can start seeing why invoiced won't work here. How do we go and put an invoice value into this report? It's not possible, right? Because invoices could be deposits on jobs and they're not recognized against people. This is why we need to use revenue. We have our ROI, which is our profit over cost. So 225%. And finally, we have our average hourly rate, which for TED is 146.25. And that's a really solid average hourly rate. So that is a team performance report. And this gives me all the data I need to be able to see how TED's performing from a financial perspective. This doesn't talk to job turnaround and other things, but from a purely financial perspective, that's all the information I need to make some decisions. Cool. So setting and monitoring KPIs. I'm going to hand over to Ruben now. That was a lot of information I just gave you really quickly. So hopefully it all made sense.
Thanks,
But
Will.
now that you've seen it, Ruben is going to take you through what this may look like in an app.
Cool. If you, within your Xero practice manager, or within your practice management tool, if you have invoicing, you have time, you have access to all that information. As you've seen through the WIP equation, is all invoicing and time and the relationship there in between. So how do we actually go about setting and monitoring, measuring my rule of 55 today, and then actually improving that if I need to? This is how we do it.
Also, I'll stop
My
screen share here.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you can take over.
Cool. I've just got a few examples to show you here. So this is an example very similar to the one you just saw that we saw for TED, but this is for their entire practice. So we looked at TED. TED can be rolled up to a team. Teams can be rolled up to a practice. Now, this is the practice performance report, and it's got all the same equations in it. We've got like productivity for the practice. And one of the questions that came through while Will was speaking is, when we're counting our, does it include administrators, partners, managers, or are we just counting our billable people? And it was actually one of the myths. We took it off. But yes, it includes everybody, and that's super important, including people who no longer work for you. It's a real easy way to make your practice performance look real good is to don't count anyone who no longer works here, because you have the benefit of all their revenue, but none of the cost of their time. So you got to look super productive, right? This report will not lie to you. For this practice here, we would say close, but not quite. 53%, still a lot of room for improvement there. That's the magic number we're looking for the rule of 55. It's saying that of all the human effort, excluding leave for the year to date for this business, 53% of that has been spent on clients. And yeah, you'd be surprised when you run this maths for yourself, what that number might be for you. It's probably not as high as you would expect. And a lot of people are quite shocked actually by saying, oh man, I'm sure I'd be up in the 70s somewhere. For your billable team, you probably are. But if you allow yourself to lie to yourself by excluding administrators, managers, and partners are a big one. A lot of partners conveniently leave their own internal time out of this equation. Don't avoid that temptation because it's a very good way to understand the structure, whether the structure of your firm is conducive to being a high performing practice or not. So for this practice here, we would say, yep, close, but not quite, still room for improvement here. And as you can see, there are a lot of recent periods where we're not hitting that rule of 55 on a month-to-month basis. Cool. So that's it at a practice level, and we've already looked at like what a practice average hourly rate looks like. And again, that's a number that you might surprise you as being quite low, or lower than you would think. You're thinking, oh man, my billable rate's like $200. Why is my average hourly rate only 83? It's like, yeah, you take this $200 value, the average of my billable rates, say, and you cut that in half because only 50% of my time is spent on clients, and now I'm at 100, and then I've got to write off 10% of that, so I'm at 90. Yeah. So for any given hour of effort that goes into running my business, we're making it $90. And should I be happy with that? I would say no. And the answer to how to improve that is in all the numbers that we'll talk you through. It's the detail in the write-offs, and it's productivity targets, and understanding your practice structure. Cool. That's the practice performance. And then at the next layer down, obviously you can drill into all these things, but this is what a team might look like. So there are ways, multiple ways you can group people up depending on what they might look like. This is just kind of a default way, if you like. Like we've got our billable people here, our administrators, our contractors, managers, etc. So we can say the productivity of my billable people for the year to date is 59%. And I would say, wow, that's shocking, right? These are our on the tools accountants. Their job is to generate revenue for me and not administrate my business. But collectively, they're not focused on client work. And the answer as to why is in here. And obviously it's sort. Look, these are all my billable, accountants. And there are people here who are very clear around what they do for a living. They come to work, they do client work, they go home. So Paul here, for the year to date, he's only spent, or for any given week, he's probably only spending an hour or two on non-client time. But then you come down here, and there are other people down here that are pretty confused around what they do for a living because they've been given these other responsibilities, or they've taken on these other non-client responsibilities. And most often, they haven't ever had it communicated to them. No one's ever said, hey, Bruce, I want you to spend 75% of your time on clients. What does that look like? That's 10 hours a week of non-client work, which is about 2 hours a day. That's quite a lot of non-client work when you think about it, eh? And he's meant to be an on-the-tools guy. So the easiest money you will make is by keeping your billable people billable. Let your fishermen fish. Basically, every little scrap of that 2 hours or 10 hours in a week for Bruce, if you can critique that, through the timesheet and say, was there anyone else who could have done that? And sometimes the answer is no. But there are some stuff that Bruce needs to do, or Bruce is the best person to do. But if that any of this 10 hours a week that Bruce is doing could be done by his manager or an administrator or a partner or a contractor, any of those are better options than Bruce. So that's where that number is really important, and how aggressive you could and how you should be thinking about that. Bruce has a very high opportunity cost if we look through to his average hourly rate down here. So we want to try to keep our fishermen fishing. Cool. And a big one is communicating it. Bruce might not have ever had it explained to him or shown to him, saying, however you communicate it, whether it's a percentage or hours or whatever, percentages are best because they're hard to hide from. They exclude leave naturally. Whereas if you were to say, Bruce, I want 30 hours of client work from you every week, he's going to get confused when there's a half day off somewhere, right? He's going to, oh, do I still need to come in on the weekend or what? And it's like, well, no, as long as the time you're here is productivity 75%, great. So that's what it looks like at a Bruce level and as a team. And so we want to lift that number as a practice so that we can lift this number, basically. Then at an individual level, come pay review time for Bruce. We're saying, hey, Bruce spends 66% of his time on clients. He's generated $95,000 worth of revenue for me. We've written up 47, written off 27 for a net of 20. And you drill into all these, and you'll be doing that on a monthly basis with Bruce's manager will be. So he's got a net write-up of 21%. That's pretty good. But he's not super focused on client work. And so he's generated 115K with the revenue for me. he's got to have a cost. There'll be a profit and an ROI and average hourly rate. So when Bruce comes to me, let's say I'm paying him, what have we got, 6 months here? Let's say I pay him 120K. So that'll say 60. The ROI there would be like 200. Actually, it'd be 195% or something. It'd be not quite there. So when he says, can I get a pay rise? The answer is yes, when this number can improve. Because you are effective, but you're not super focused. And he goes, oh man, well, I got all this other shit you ask me to do all the time. And okay, great, let's look at that. CPD training, you need that. Data management, someone else to do that for you, Bruce. Internal training and staff meetings, 8 hours. Okay, office admin, why are we doing that? These are all great monthly things for Bruce's manager to share and help Bruce achieve that result. So what does that look like day to day? So this is a sort of report you might do, quarterly or at least annually for Bruce when we're trying to decide how can we improve Bruce's performance? Can we afford to pay Bruce more? We might schedule this to Bruce on a weekly basis and send it straight to Bruce. And not everyone might need that report. We might want to get Bruce from 66 to 75, say. How's he going to get there? Well, we need to tell him that to start with and share with him his progress. So that's one option and a pretty popular option. And just for people who need it, we don't want to spam our entire organization. People are already productive. They don't need to be told they're productive. They've already got good habits. So you don't have to worry about them so much. Send them a different report. Send them a recoverability-based report, so they can improve that. But day to day, when Bruce comes to work, if I come into what Bruce's life might look like, if we come back to our team, this is imagining our team. This will
Context
be
where we are right now, Rubes. So we're in Link right now. This is our product. This is our practice product, just for context.
Cool. So every person has an available hours that they're meant to work for us, and that informs their availability, obviously, and their capacity and how much work we can give them and whatnot. And then every person also has a target capacity, and that number should look very familiar. It'll be their target productivity. It's the same. So we need to make sure that Bruce knows what his target productivity is. It's the same as his target capacity, and we're actually allocating him that client work to do the work. If we don't give him enough work, he's going to find that hard, right? So these numbers are the same. And the subtotal of these should be 55% as a minimum. When Bruce comes to work for the day, I'll be Ruben actually for this. This is everything Bruce has been given to do. Hey Bruce, this is all coming from your zero practice manager or practice management. Here's everything I want you to do. But you also have 37 hours up your sleeve. Even once you get through all this work, you still have, based on the hours you work and the percentage of that's client and all the stuff I've already given you to do and a bunch of other things, you still have 37 hours up your sleeve. Bruce works on what he needs to work on. He progresses that to review points, does his timesheet. 3/4 of the timesheet are done for him. It's 36 minutes since his last timesheet. Adds his note. And if you just pause here for a moment, you'll see there's a gap in this donut. That gap is his productivity target. So right now, for the week so far, he's at 78%. And his target was, in this example, 50. That's the gap. So he's smashing it right now. He knows he's smashing it. And he's being told he's smashing it every time he does a timesheet. So there's no secrets or surprises for Bruce here. He knows what his target is. He sees it every time he does a timesheet. He knows why he's not hitting it and what he can do about it. And so that when we come to pay review time and when we come to rule of 55 time, it's pretty easy to see how all of this starts from the timesheet day to day up to the week, to the month, to the individual, to the team, to the practice, and then we're all making money. So that's what a timesheet might look like. It'll just increase a little bit for my 36-minute timesheet there, and then Bruce will move on with his life. On to the next task. Cool. Anything I missed there, Will?
No, not at all. No, that's good. I think, just the context where Ruben was just then, for those that didn't know. So at Link, we have a reporting and we have a practice management product. So the practice product does workflow and capacity. And we're in the process right now, because I know there's a lot of Link reporting customers on the call. We're currently rebuilding the reporting product in that practice product that you just saw. So bring it all together. Our objective by the end of this calendar year, we want to have the standalone product from XPM. So it'll still work with XPM if you want to keep the integration on. We'll still be feeding timesheets back and forth, but we're also going to have the option to be standalone from XPM as well, and Link. So yeah, just for the context where Rubs was just then, it was in our practice product. So I'll hop back into my slides here and we'll look at wrapping up shortly.
I do have two questions. Oh, sorry, one more question just from Vanessa.
Yeah, sure.
Vanessa's asking, what happens? How are write-ons and write-offs allocated when there are multiple people working on a job? Do we want to answer that now?
Great question. Yeah, I can answer that now. So, so with a job, so we'll start with like some context here. So with you want to think of your jobs in Zero Practice Manager as the engagement. So your engagement represents what you've agreed with the client, and that's where the billing is going to be captured. So you want to make sure that all of your time is captured in the same job. What we don't want to have is a job here with the invoicing and a bunch of jobs over here with the time, and then we don't have cohesion with those WIP wash-ups. Because what we do is, as we saw earlier, WIP is billable time, and negative WIP is our invoices. So what we do is a WIP wash-up when we finish the job. With a WIP wash-up, we take all the revenue and we apportion it to all of the time, and then we have write-ons and write-offs. And those are done, assuming that everything's in the same job, they're done at a timesheet level. So let's say, for example, I have $5,000 of invoicing in the job and have $6,000 of timesheets, and we've got, there could be 30 timesheets that make up those values. So we know with $5,000 of invoicing, $6,000 of time, there's $1,000 to be written off. And then it's going to apportion that write-off over all of those timesheet entries relative to the billable amount of each entry. So if somebody has done $4,000 of the time and someone has done $2,000 of the time, someone will get geez, I've got my maths now. They'll get, so it'll be a portion. It'll be split. Two-thirds. Sorry, I'm thinking on the spot.
They'll get two-thirds of they'll get $667 written off applied to the two-thirds person. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
That's like the default method in XPM. That's like the catch-all method. There are other ways you can get a bit fancier than that, but that's the answer.
Yeah. So rule of thumb, we want to have revenue and time in the same jobs. And what we just saw there is, so you create your jobs in Zero Practice Manager, they pull through into Link, and then we build our workflow out of the jobs that are in XPM. Our workflow is built off those tasks and those jobs. That way, we've built this as a solution around not having to have multiple jobs and time and all these different jobs. It makes wash-ups really complicated.
Yep.
So the jobs created in XPM, the tasks pull through into Link, and then we can allocate all that work out to our team members. And the beauty is because we're able to allocate that work out in Link, we can calculate capacity live from there. So yeah.
Thanks, Will.
Cool. So what we're going to touch on is like the last part of this presentation. We're going to talk about how we've talked about productivity, which is the main part. We've talked about our recoverability, and what we're going to have a quick look at now is capacity and how that sort of plays in with productivity. So capacity is the total hours available for client work after accounting for leave and making allowances for internal time. So that's our definition of capacity. Now, it's really important because it's the production plan for your team. The capacity plan is your production plan. Now, you can do an annual capacity plan, which may look something like this. And this is, again, the back of a napkin style capacity plan. We have your team members. You have the hours per week that you expect them to work, the hours per year, our target capacity for each team member. We've got our billable rates. So we have our target billable hours, expected non-billable hours, which would be the inverse. So you probably see Tim at the top here, 50% target capacity. We have 900 of expected non-billable hours, just like that. Then we have our productivity target. And what you'll notice there is your productivity target is identical to your capacity target. This is where these worlds are starting to collide, right? Capacity looks forwards, productivity looks backwards. So if we make a plan and we follow that plan perfectly, capacity and productivity will be identical. From here, we can look at our target revenue. So this is like a really basic capacity plan, looking at our team and the amount of work that we could take on. So at capacity, we could take on just under $1.2 million of revenue. Now, that plan works perfect under the following assumptions. No staff leave and you hire no new staff. Everyone hits their exact productivity target every month. No jobs take longer than expected. No jobs are completed faster than expected. No new work comes in and no clients leave. And everyone takes exactly their full amount of entitled leave for the year. So assuming that none of these things happen, that capacity plan, perfect. Now, obviously in reality, doesn't happen. So capacity is the natural byproduct of your workflow system. So your workflow system must measure and track capacity in real time. So every interaction keeps capacity alive, and that way we have a live production plan for our team, and we can adjust as things come up. So We'll cover more details of that in another session, but that's us for today on the rule of 55, productivity, recoverability, and capacity, and how these worlds all play together. Briefly, there's a lot more to it, but
Amazing.
it's a good,
Thanks, Will.
a good introduction.
That was a real good introduction. There is one question from Juicy Mama. Juicy Mama asks, do you dudes prefer one job per client per year with lots of tasks, or a job for each task?
Great question. So it comes back to this idea that the job represents the engagement. So it comes down to how you build that. So if you have an engagement with your client where you're going to do the annual accounts and tax returns and your BAS returns, and that's all under one engagement, that's one job. If you have a separate engagement from your BAS as you do your annual accounts, that's where there would be separate jobs. So as long as the job represents the engagement, so the revenue is in that job, that's where the time goes. And that's sort of the rule of thumb. So the golden rule of thumb, time and invoice need to go to the same job. So hopefully that answers the question.
No matter what, if you're not aligning time and invoicing, you're going to really, really struggle with anything to do with recoverability, write-offs, pricing, WIP, a lot of things. So
the 5 pillars that Reubs and I really focus on is like understand and manage your work in progress, increase your productivity, increase your recoverability, like master your pricing, and then optimize your capacity. All of those 5 things all play together really nicely, and it all requires time and invoices to be in the same job. Otherwise, we have no reporting and we can't do anything.
Yeah. Great answer. Cool. And one of the reasons we built link capacity is that historically, I'm talking like 2 years or so ago, the trade-off there was that it was really hard in XPM natively to look at all your tasks, right? You got 4 BAS returns to do, but they're so well hidden underneath that in that job screen. But as you've seen with Link and practice management tool that's there with the live available capacity, that's all task driven and has to be task driven for 2 reasons. One is tasks have estimated times. That's the only way you can draw on an available person's availability. Jobs don't have an estimated time, so they can't ever draw on a person or calculate a person's availability. But the other one is it's actually like the main workflow record is the task. Yeah, regardless of whether you've got multiple jobs with 1 task each or 1 job with lots of different tasks, it's always tasks where it's at for workflow, no matter what.
Yeah, so job is the engagement, the task is the deliverable that builds your workflow. And the beauty is with the task is it can be allocated to a person, it can be given a due date, and it can be given an estimated number of hours. Those are the 3 elements required for capacity planning. And because everything's all in the system, live capacity just falls out the back end of the workflow. So the really high level, create your jobs in XPM. They all sync through to Link. We allocate all the work out, and we've got a way to auto allocate all that work out. If we do have customers on this call, this is coming on Monday, by the way, you can allocate all your work out by going auto suggest, and then that just builds your workflow. And then you just have a nice year with like really tidy, transparent workflow.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, well, I think we'll do a bit more announcement around that when that comes out with some videos and whatnot. But if there are no further questions, we'll wrap that up. Rule of 55, go and understand where you're at. 50, not good enough. 60, awesome. 55, acceptable. Hopefully that's if that's all you take away, that's enough.
Awesome. So thanks so much for coming along today, guys. And we're going to do webinars once a month. So we'd love you to join us next month as well.
Cool. Pricing is the next topic. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, sweet.
Nice.
Awesome.
Right.
Thanks, team.
Yeah, team.